The controller told us that these objects had been observed for over 2 weeks, coming down from over 80,000 feet, rapidly descending to 20,000 feet, hanging out for hours, and then going straight back up. For those who don't realize, above 80,000 feet is space.
Is there a correlation between any of the characteristics of these UAPs, UFOs?
What we tend to see are the smaller vehicles tend to be, think of a sports car. The large ones tend to be not always, but almost exclusively either triangular shape or boomerang shape.
Werewolves? I see dead people walking around like regular people. They don't see each other. They only see what they want to see. They don't know they're dead.
The UFO, UAP community was fairly surprised. Shocked might be a better word.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
Biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human.
Do you think there is life on other planets?
Well, I'm not quite sure, but I suppose there would be.
I've seen a flying saucer.
You've seen one?
Yes, definitely. At Lane Cove.
When was this?
1953.
You don't think this is a figment of your imagination?
Several other people with me saw it.
I'm not wishing that all that stay with me.
There is now a new UFO whistleblower with some major bombshell level statements.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This episode is brought to you by 7 completely awesome people. Lisa Bowden, Tabin Rice, Kelly Lewis, Mecca Mickey, Diane Boss, Jeanette Angel, and Dorothy Hawkins. And a special thank you to all of the subscribers on YouTube and followers on Spotify. If you wish to support the podcast, you can hit that join button below to help become an Eyes to That Sky member. Or if you want to join our Patreon or provide other support, the links are below in the show description. But now, on with the show. Welcome to the Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast, where we explore the unexplained and mysterious phenomena that have occurred throughout the state of Michigan and beyond.
From UFO sightings to ghostly encounters, we delve deep into the stories, the evidence, and the theories behind these strange events.
We are your hosts. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Wayne.
We are an educator duo that after an encounter with a triangular UFO in 2018 in Michigan, we decided to investigate UFOs and the paranormal. In this podcast, we will be speaking with eyewitnesses, experts, and researchers to uncover the truth about some of the most intriguing cases of paranormal activity in and around Michigan.
Our goal is not to convince anyone of the existence of these phenomena, but rather to provide a platform for discussion and exploration. So, buckle up and join us on this journey down the paranormal rabbit hole.
On an escalator.
All right. Good evening, everyone. And we are coming to you live from southeastern Michigan within the shadow of the great Motor City, Detroit, Michigan. Tucked away in our little humble abode, we want to welcome everybody to the show. And look, it's May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, 2024. And look who has made it back from the grave.
It's like Revenge of the Fifth.
Yeah, that's true, right? We had May the 4th
May
be
the
with
4th
you.
be
Right?
with you and Revenge of the Fifth.
Yeah.
I feel like I should have worn my Star Wars gear.
Yeah.
Would have been the
look at
stormtroopers all the way.
Stormtrooper, there you go. All right. So tonight we're going to have an amazing show. I can't wait to dive into this. This has a lot. This is going to have a lot of information in it. We're going to talk about Mothman. We're going to talk about different types of trauma, the connection to UFOs, all that good stuff. So just want to do a quick hello to everybody in chat. We got Nain, of course. Nain Rouge is here. We have Diane Boss, one of our most favorite members, is here.
We've got Corey 42 and Suzanne. Blue Crossroads has just joined us as well.
Hey, Blue Crossroads, welcome. All right. So time is one of those things. It's a resource that you can never get back. So I want to go ahead and get jumping right into this interview. So tonight we have the authors of the book, Bridging the Tragedy, Silver Linings in the Mysterious Ohio Valley. And those authors are Jaci and Bill, and let me pop them in here. There we go. Kousoulas, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. We are very happy to have you on tonight and very excited. Definitely need to talk about this and see the connection between paranormal experiences, trauma that comes from that, and then there is the UFO experiences, which seem to kind of go different, like in different ways. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I need to just throw this question out to both of you first and foremost is what was it that initially drew you to the Mothman legend and that collapse of the Silver Bridge back from way back in, I think it was December of 67, was it not?
Yes. Yep. And I would have to say the standard answer that I've been giving for this and my interest really was piqued with the 2002 movie, The Mothman Prophecies, starring Richard Gere, Laura Linney, Deborah Messing, and Will Patton. That got me into it. And then I just kind of took off and researched everything I could get my hands on. That's how I got involved with it.
Jaci, how about you? Let me guess. Did Bill drag you along?
He did. I think I probably had seen the Mothman Prophecy movie before I met Bill, but I wasn't sure. And if I did, I probably just thought it was very confusing and very strange because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you're just watching it without reading the Mothman Prophecy book by John Keel. And Bill wanted me to watch it with him, so I did. And then I wanted to go on vacation, so I asked him where he'd like to go on vacation, and he wanted to go see the Mothman statue and visit the museum. And I said, I'm good with that as long as we go to Serpent Mound, because I wanted to see the Serpent Mound. So once I went to Point Pleasant, I was sold. So
very interesting that you bring that up, because that was one of the questions I was going to have for you guys a little bit later on about that. What was your initial reaction when you got to Point Pleasant? What was your first gut reaction?
For me, it was absolute euphoria. Because
explain
really,
why.
I saw the movie. I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it, the home version of it, the DVD, and I enjoyed the movie. I didn't find it to be riveting. What I did find was that there was enough meat on the bone in the movie that it piqued my interest. And at the very end of the movie, they talked about how the movie was based upon events that happened in 1966 and 67 in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. So from that point forward, I began getting my hands on everything that I could to study about the Mothman phenomena, about the Silver Bridge disaster, everything that happened in and around that time frame. So for the next almost 15 years, that was my favorite pastime. And arriving at Point Pleasant when we did in 2016, all those years later, was almost like a holy experience for me. It was really pretty mystical. We were blown away by the natural beauty of the area, but most importantly, we were very taken by the people that we met the first time we were there. For the first week that we were there, everybody we talked to was welcoming. They were pleasant. It was just it was a mountaintop type experience for me.
And Jackie, were you at this point like, okay, he's going a little bit crazy with this right now? What did you have that same kind of feeling, or were you just observing?
I literally actually going across the Silver Bridge, the Memorial Silver Bridge. We got to the hotel and we stayed in Gallup Place, Ohio. And when we were checking in, I went in and checked us in, and Bill was getting the luggage from the car. And I told him, I said, "Can we have a room that faces the Silver Bridge?" And they gave us a perfect room that was on the 3rd floor, and you looked out and you could see the bridge. And he was like, "Yes!" And it was like so cool. And then when we crossed the bridge, I mean, I literally was so excited about just crossing the Memorial Bridge and the rivers and then starting to put it together. But when we got to Point Pleasant, we're like, where do we go? You know, we went over the Silver Bridge, the Memorial Bridge, then we went over the Green Bridge, the James Bartow Bridge. And so we're like, where do we go? Where do we go? And you head down kind of off the bridge, and I was looking to the left, and you could see the Mothman statue down one of the streets. And it's like, there's the statue. So we had to go around because it's a one-way street. And when we were walking down the street, it was just like this sleepy little town that looked like it was like a blast from the past, from the 60s. I mean, nothing had changed much there at all, which was really quite cool. And then as we were walking down the street, there was a diner. It was called the Mothman Diner, Paris Steakhouse, aka Mothman Diner. And when we walked past there, I said to Bill, "There's a lady in the window that wants to talk to us." And he said, no, I want to keep going. I want to see what's down here. And I said, no, I really think she wants to talk to us. So we went inside, and that's kind of what took us to the point of really wanting to investigate more about the bridge part of it.
Okay, so you guys went there just with the idea of going there and not an idea about investigating and writing a book just yet? Because Bill, weren't you working on your Ph.D. then during that time frame?
I was, Wayne. And really, I mean, my bachelor's, which I got way back in the 1990s, is in English. And I'd always wanted to be an author, but real life got in the way, and I took a career in sales, and it's been a good run for me. For many, many years, I've had a very successful technology sales career, but I was missing something. And I was really passionate about the paranormal, and in particular Mothman. But I also began graduate school in 2012, actually 2015, and taking one class per quarter for the next several years until I completed the whole journey. But long story short, yes, I was working on a doctorate in psychology when we were on this trip, and we were in the early stages of that aspect of the doctoral journey. But things kind of coalesced after we visited Point Pleasant once, and we met Carolyn, and the idea just came together after many years of visiting Point Pleasant annually in 2021. That's when we spun up our research plan to be able to investigate what we did for that first book.
Okay, so then I have to ask you, because Michelle and I started this podcast and the show after we had an experience in 2018. We're both, I'm a science teacher. I'm a high school science teacher. Michelle teaches middle school English and has a master's degree. I have a bachelor's of science in secondary education and earth and space science. And neither one of us really gave two craps about paranormal and stuff. Yeah, it was fun to watch on TV. You know, they're going to Waverly. Oh, okay. Let's watch, green screen stuff, through the night vision goggles and jump around and, get scared. But for us, it was after we had that experience, did we feel that we needed to try to connect people, let them get their stories heard, get that off of their chest, where a place where people could feel safe. I mean, to use a cliche, you know, a safe space for them to talk or listen to just normal people like us talk about our experience and things going on here in Michigan. Come to find out, so many people were experiencing UFOs and paranormal things that we've just been constantly going with a show now for 4 years and just blown away. Do you think something like that happened with both of you, or at least you, Bill, that after you saw that movie, there was a calling, there was something that said, "Hey, get to Point Pleasant. I got something more for you."
I really believe in life that everything happens for a reason, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, as our conversation develops. But my doctoral thesis was about the phenomena of post-traumatic growth. It's the good things that we experience as a result of going through traumatic experiences. And I wasn't even really that far into my doctoral education when we went to Point Pleasant the first time. But what happened between us and Carolyn really kind of planted the seed for what we wanted to do next. And I'd like Jackie to share a little bit of what that experience with Carolyn was like, to give you a background to why we developed this thing the way that we did.
Okay, sounds good, because it sounds like then we're probably going to go right into what my next question was going to be. And that was, lead us through the background of what happened in 67 and what Mothman may or may not be, or what, because some people here are young and they've probably never heard of this before. Maybe they've seen the movie, maybe they haven't. But Jackie, please go ahead.
Well, with Carolyn, Bill asked her if he said, "You look familiar. How would I know you? Have you been on TV?" And she said, "Yes." And she blushed when she said that she had been on 16 or 17 different episodes for Mothman. She said, "I'll talk to you about anything, but I won't talk to you about the bridge." We later found out that was because her 2-year-old son, Timmy, was on the bridge and he passed away. He didn't survive. And I understand totally why she wouldn't talk about the bridge. But what she did talk about was, I don't know what Bill wants me to say. What she did talk about was the Men in Black. And she said that there were 2 different types of Men in Black that she saw. And she said to me that she called them government men, for her West Virginia accent, government men.
Yeah,
and
sure.
she said, and then the other kind just didn't look like they were from around here. And, like, what I mean, kind of stuff. Like they had like a waxy kind of appearance. And I can't remember now if it was like a palish or a yellowish tone to it. I think she said pale, more pale tone, but they didn't seem right. They did not seem like the other Men in Black that were there. When we asked her, I said, "Did you see the lights in the sky? Any of the lights in the sky?" I mean, one of the chapters of the Mothman Prophecy is Purple Lights in April Foolishness. And that's because of the UFO activity that occurred during that same period. And she said that they were the most beautiful lights she's ever seen. And she said that she did not have any interaction with a UFO other than just seeing the lights in the sky. I mean, she didn't even call those UFOs. She called those the lights, the beautiful lights. But she said her brother had a UFO that landed in his backyard. She talked about quite a bit of things, but I can't remember other than those few things right there that really stood out. But she was so friendly and so open to answer all of our questions, except for anything about the bridge. And then when we left there, we went back in there every day while we were in Point Pleasant the first visit. And when we left there, she said, "If you have more questions, just call me." And she gave me one of her cards for the Mothman Diner. And she wrote on the back of the card her home phone number and her cell phone number. So she said, "Reach out if you want anything." And I'm like, who does that? Who gives out cell phone and their home phone number. And so we took that, and I just expected that we would just go back to Point Pleasant, hopefully someday, or call Carolyn and talk to her someday, because she literally felt like she was like a mother figure or a grandmother figure or something. She was just the sweetest woman. And on Christmas Eve of the same year, we were coming back from my mom's house, or maybe was it Christmas Eve or Christmas? Yeah. And we were talking, Bill's like, I think that I'm going to ask Carolyn if I can write her story. And she wouldn't talk about it. And I'm like, I don't think she will, but I think if you're going to ask her, you should probably ask after the holidays. And Christmas night, one of the men that we met when we first went out there as well at Carolyn's Diner, it was named Mark Griffith, and he ended up being someone we interviewed for our book. He sent me a message on Facebook, and he said Carolyn had a heart attack, and she's flown to a hospital. And then a little bit later, he said Carolyn died. She died on the 26th, right after, early morning of the 26th of December. So we never had the opportunity of seeing her again. I get pretty emotional when I think of Carolyn, because we really hoped that we'd be able to see her again. And we didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
I wanted Jackie to share that background because we didn't really know what we were going to do with the whole Point Pleasant experience. To me, it seemed like a mountaintop experience. And in meeting Carolyn and meeting Mark and Mark's sister, Lynn is in a couple of different Small Town Monsters documentaries. She's somebody who we've gotten to know as well the last several years, but I thought we'd go there once, maybe another time down the road. And we certainly liked Carolyn, but getting the idea to ask her if I could interview her to tell her story, and then finding out the very next day she'd had a heart attack and then she was gone, it was devastating to us. And I wasn't able to really compartmentalize that and figure out exactly what that was until a few years down the road. Obviously, we liked her, but it had a more profound impact on me than the brief relationship, I guess, should have, if that makes sense. But it hit me at a very deep level. And so over the course of the next few years, we continued to go back to Point Pleasant every year. And what we found were, in addition to Carolyn's kindness and openness and friendliness, everybody we met, 90% of the people we met in town were welcoming to us. They made us feel like we were the most important part of their day. And it wasn't about us. It's because that's the kind of people they are. Just led us to build more friendships over the years. So when I finished my doctorate in 21, we basically used some of the research that I had done for post-traumatic growth, but incorporated that into a new study about the Silver Bridge disaster and the paranormal phenomena that took place in 66 and 67 in the greater Ohio River Valley.
Okay. This is blowing my mind right now, because in Michigan in 1966 was the famous swamp gas debacle, where we had Project Blue Book out here at the request of then Senator or Representative. I think he was a senator, Michelle. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But Gerald Ford, who later became president when Nixon resigned. But at his request, he had Project Blue Book come out here because in 1966, the month of March and April, were massive sightings of UFOs around the Hillsdale, Ann Arbor, Dexter area. I don't know if you may have seen some of this stuff on some documentaries, and that was one of the first things we kind of covered. And then we ended up with the with our podcast. We covered that one, like our first, second, or I think it was our second or third episode. We talked about that, and we had the author Ray Szymanski come on, who wrote the book Swamp Gas My Ass, and he was a engineer from Wright-Patterson who wanted to investigate what was going on with all of these UFO sightings, and it led him all the way to the colonel his name was Colonel Carroll out of Selfridge National Guard Base, who took a flight. It was him and his wingman, and they were ordered to pursue these disc-shaped objects that were zipping around, being chased by the sheriff department in Washtenaw County here. And all of this stuff was going on. And that was 66 here in Michigan. And now you're saying that in 66 and 67, before that bridge collapse, there were all kinds of UFO sightings and things like that there. Now, that is all news to me because, I mean, I've heard of Mothman. I think I may have seen the Mothman Prophecies. It was a long time ago. I don't remember. But I've never heard of any of that kind of a connection. So I don't know. Maybe this is a good time you can kind of give us a refresher on what exactly is this Mothman Prophecies, and what happened with the Silver Bridge.
I see Jackie and me both smiling at each other.
Waiting to see who's going to take the lead.
Who's going to dive in. She's probably expecting me to, but I wanted to defer to you if you wanted to, but I'm happy to do that.
Ladies first, Jackie.
You want to? Go ahead, honey.
That's okay. I just did a bunch of talking. He's perfectly fine. He tells very good stories, though.
Yeah, she usually tries to cut me off because I just go off on tangents. But to answer your question, Wayne, so John Keel is the author of the Mothman Prophecies book. And he was a guy who was a screenwriter, really, for all kinds of late night talk shows like the predecessors to the Johnny Carson show and things like that. He was a joke writer. He was a funny man, and he had a pretty good living going, but he wasn't really finding a groove to give himself professional satisfaction like he felt that he should from a career. And so he had one session in psychoanalysis, and after that session was over, he got out of that business where he was making a good living to become a full-time ufologist. And
really? Okay.
He actually took an article he was given an assignment to do the definitive article for Playboy magazine on UFOs. So John Keel was a voluminous researcher. The amount of work that he did during his lifespan is just astounding. But he began working on this article for Playboy magazine about UFOs, and this was in the mid-60s. What happened was it kept getting longer and longer and longer, and Playboy said, we can't do this. This is a book. So he basically broke up the contract with Playboy to start writing the book, which he called Operation Trojan Horse. That book came out in 1970, and it was really a very scientific study about the whole UFO phenomenon. But during his travels in 66, there was a rumor that there was a young kid, like a teenager, who had found a cat that had wings on it. And this kid took this cat and was basically showing it to anybody who would come and give him a nickel for a showing. 5 cents to a kid back in the 60s was decent money. So he was collecting all these nickels and, dimes and what have you. And then the lady who owned the cat, she tried to sue him to get the cat back because he had found it as a stray. But when she found out that there was money involved, she wanted the cat back. Well, before the court date happened, the cat shed its wings. They fell off, and then nobody got any money for the cat. But in his travels to go interview this young kid, there were reports coming out of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, that there was a black winged creature that had been spotted numerous times in the area. And it had piercing red eyes. It followed cars. It chased them at 50, 60, 70 miles an hour down highways. Never hurt anybody, but scared people half to death. So Keel went to Point Pleasant, and he hooked up with a lady by the name of Mary Heyer. And Mary Heyer was the local stringer for the Athens, Ohio Messenger. And she was reporting on all the different sightings that were going on, not just of Mothman, but what a lot of people who aren't really familiar with the Mothman story are not aware of is that there were just as many UFO sightings and beautiful lights in the sky sightings as there were Mothman reports, if not more, during that time frame. So all these things were going on, not just Mothman, not just UFOs, not just lights in the sky, but like Jackie mentioned, Men in Black were showing up, trying to shut down people talking about all this phenomena. Cattle mutilations were being found in fields. There was poltergeist activity, all kinds of stuff. It was like a Skinwalker Ranch type situation happening in Point Pleasant. The Mothman Prophecies is called the Mothman Prophecies because John Keel was getting information from alleged otherworldly sources about future events. And He was never given the direction that a bridge would collapse in Point Pleasant, but he was given information that there was going to be a disaster happening on the Ohio River. He thought that it was going to be a chemical plant. He never put two and two together to figure out that it was the bridge. But in addition to that, he also got prophecies about Martin Luther King being assassinated, Bobby Kennedy being assassinated, the Pope being assassinated. Two of those three things happened. The Pope wasn't assassinated, but somebody tried to kill the Pope. They stopped it. So he got all kinds of information ahead of time. And what he didn't get was the bridge going down, which did collapse on December 15th of 1967.
Was the Men in Black situation, was that before the bridge collapse, or was that after?
It was before the bridge collapse. It was when all the sightings were taking place. In fact, some of them happened afterwards as well. In fact, now that I think of it, in the Mothman Prophecies book, in the very beginning, there is a lady, an odd man who was described as being short with Coke bottle bottom glasses, really deep eyes, who approached Mary Hyder in her office shortly after, which was kind of trying to intimidate her, not talking about.
I'm not sure what's going on with him.
Well, I think Bill said he had to go on his hotspot. Oh, there you are. Okay.
I'm still here.
So you were,
I guess
you were talking about the glass guy with glasses.
Yeah, you went out. We didn't hear you after you were talking about the Coke bottle glasses.
Yeah, basically he just tried to intimidate Mary into stopping reporting on the UFOs and the Mothman, but she wouldn't back down. So that's all you missed.
Okay. That is very fascinating. And we started talking a little bit about this, but first of all, one of the things I do want to do is I want to show everybody this right here. Bada boom, bada bing. There's the book right there. It's called Bridging the Tragedy: Silver Linings in the Mysterious Ohio River Valley. Now, I was reading through this, and this is on Amazon, so everybody go get their book. Look, it's got 5 stars. Help them out. Go grab the book or grab the Audible. That's probably what I'm going to do. But I was looking at this, and something jumped out at me while I was reading this, and the silver linings in the mysterious Ohio Valley, and I said, what else is in the Ohio Valley? So I started looking around and playing with maps. And let me turn off this top overlay here. There we go. All right. So this is Google Maps. And here we have Cincinnati. And close to about 20, well, maybe 40 miles to the east of Cincinnati, we have the Great Serpent Mound. And everybody's pretty familiar with that. It seems to be a equatorial, not an equatorial, but an equinox and solstice marker. Very famous mound. But if we go over here just a little bit, right here, we have Point Pleasant. And something jumped out at me about, could these things be somehow connected? And I was curious if your research, when you started looking into this, if your research led you to maybe any type of Native American belief systems or deities or something that may connect, because there's ancient mounds all over there. There's a mound cultures that we're just finding in the Ohio Valley and all the way to the East Coast that are being discovered, like America's Stonehenge and and Salem, Connecticut, I believe it is. And we're finding all this stuff. But is there any kind of connection with Native Americans and Mothman or some type of creature like this?
What Bill didn't say about Mothman, because it wasn't Point Pleasant, is before the Point Pleasant sightings even started or were first reported, there were sightings down by Charleston. Clendenin, West Virginia is a suburb just a little east. It's right outside of Charleston. 3 grave diggers saw a Mothman type creature flying up out from the trees when they were digging one night. I don't know why they were digging at night, but seems kind of shady. But part of our research, we interviewed 2 people that were from the North Charleston area, is what it's called today. But at the time they were growing up, it was literally called Mound, West Virginia.
Oh, wow.
So there's that. And they have had unbelievably amount of paranormal things happening to them, including UFO sightings and Mothman sightings. And then there is the cornstalk curse of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And there is so much just on cornstalk and the Native Americans, the Revolutionary War, arguably, I can't spit it out.
It's one of those nights.
Yes. It has said the first battle of the Revolutionary War started in Point Pleasant. That ground, Point Pleasant, is just ridden with blood. That is a blood-soaked land, and a lot of it was native. And Native Americans didn't stay there. They wouldn't stay on that land. So Bill can tell you the story about cornstalk.
Sure. So Chief Cornstalk basically was the principal chieftain of the Shawnee and the Mingo tribes back in the 1700s, the late 1700s. He was a big guy. They described him as being about 6'6", stoic. He was very much a leader, but not because he wanted to be, not because he was a power-hungry guy, because he knew that the nations needed it. Against the budding American colonialism, we kept pushing into their lands. And rather than having more and more battles where lives were going to be lost, he wanted to have a treaty to establish peace. So after several battles, he decided to travel to Camp Randolph, where the Americans were staying. And sorry, I've got my dogs fighting right behind me now.
Yeah, just so everybody knows we have the herd of cats that runs through here. Every time we start a live stream, they'll sleep all day and they just wait. But Bill also has a dog on his end, so it's not demonic voices or anything like that going on.
Yeah, we've got a couple of 80-pound lab puppies, and they want to go outside really badly right now. And now they're wrestling right in front of me. So,
yeah.
Long story short about Cornstalk, as he was traveling to the American camp, there was another battle that took place, and there were a couple of Americans who were killed. And so there was a lot of drinking going on. And as he arrived with his son and another individual, he was taken prisoner and then held in stocks and then basically shot at point blank range. So he was killed. He was martyred basically for the cause. And as legend has it, in his dying breath, he uttered a curse upon the land, stating that the land would not prosper for 200 years. Now, we mentioned Lynn Robinson, who was Mark Griffith's sister. She was also, we met her on our first trip there also to Point. Bear with me a second. Sorry about that.
Just real quick, while he's taking care of that, Dorothy Hawkins, Mama Dorothy, thank you very much for the $2 super chat. You are awesome as always. All right, Bill.
And Maggie has got Ellie's head in her mouth at the moment. But as legend has it, he cursed the land. Lynn, who was his great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter, said no native would ever curse the land. That's totally fabricated. And there's been some debate about whether or not there was a legitimate curse placed. So we've come to believe that it wasn't legitimate. And then we found evidence to kind of purport that it was. I'm going to let Jackie take over here, and I'm going to do something about these mongrels.
All right, sounds good. Jackie?
I think what he's talking about, the evidence that we found that it was cursed. George Dudding, he is an author from Point Pleasant, West Virginia. He doesn't live there now, but he has written so many books on West Virginia alone. That West Virginia is a wild state. There is so much activity out there. There are so many ghosts to be seen and heard and felt. And anyway, he wrote a book on the cornstalk curse, and he's got so much factual stuff in there that we truly believe that it was a curse. It was a curse on the land. And I still think it's cursed.
Well,
but you don't feel that. I mean, when I go there, it feels, I think Bill said it, magical. It feels like a magical place to go. And I wonder if it's the confluence of the river of the two rivers that caused that feeling.
Yeah, there could be something to do with like the geology in the area as well. Quartz, if there's some type of a failed fault line or something, you might have some kind of ground movement, releasing of energy, those kind of things. So, Bill, did you want to jump back in here and add some more?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, we've gotten to know George Dutting, the author Jackie was talking about the last few years, and purchased his book about the cornstalk curse at the last Mothman Festival, and I read it. What he gives is a lot of factual evidence for the fact that there was a belief in the cornstalk curse prior to the 1920s. And he goes back into some pretty voluminous research that indicates that there was a belief in that curse for many, many years. I don't know that I believe that cornstalk did place the curse, but there is a historical belief that it took place. And like Jackie had talked about, and you had mentioned also, Wayne, that whole area is really kind of a river of the dead. There are mounds up and down the Kanawha River, which is the river that intersects the Ohio at Point Pleasant. Many of those burial mounds were leveled over the years, which is totally sacrilegious. In the area where Mothman was originally sighted in Point Pleasant, the TNT area, which is now called the McClintock Wildlife Preserve, that area there has 3 different communal burial grounds of natives from the skirmishes that took place back in the 1700s. So there's all kinds of evidence that something is going on here that may be related to the Native Americans who lost their lives over the countless years.
Sure. Okay, so I've got a big list of questions coming in from our chat. We got a lot of people watching and throwing stuff our way. But first, need to give a big thank you to Diane Boss, who's been a member now for 7 months. She says, love being part of your team. Love you both. Thank you, Diane. You are awesome. We're very happy to have you on board as one of our Eyes to the Sky members. So thank you very much for re-upping your membership. That's awesome. Now, I want to jump in before I go to my questions. We've got a guy. I think it's a guy. I don't know. We never ask anybody who they are, but in our chat that is named Nain and has been asking some questions, and I'm looking at these, and one of them kind of jumps out at me, and it's this one right here. What is the earliest references to the Mothman?
So in John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies, he goes into detail about the fact that as far as history is concerned, into time immemorial, there have been cave paintings with figures that look like Mothman was described as. But that being said, and I'm going to kind of jog my memory here a little bit, there was a spring-heeled jack phenomenon that took place in England in the earlier part of the 20th century, so 19-something. I'm not exactly sure when that was. But there was also a manifestation that was described as being very similar to how Mothman was reported, called the Mad Gasser in Mattoon, Illinois. And this was a being that wore a cape, and it had like headlights coming out of its chest, which is kind of the way Mothman was described as well in Point Pleasant. And this took place, I want to say, back in the 1940s in Illinois. So historically, there's been some evidence for things going back into the late 1800s, early 1900s. But again, there were depictions of things like this in cave paintings going back into time immemorial.
And you touched on something about belief in the curses. What do you guys think about if you have enough people together that believe strongly enough in something, they can basically manifest it or create it, or somehow down the road, I think they're called topas, or where they create these creatures almost out of their own minds, and you get enough people believing this, or what's one of the other ones where it's like the Simpsons predicted 9/11, and this forward
the prophecies.
Yeah, like the foreshadowing of stuff in popular culture and things like that. Do you guys have a thought on anything to do with that situation?
I would say yes, absolutely. And I do think that collectively, when we form ideas in a group conscience, or let's say the four of us have this belief in extraterrestrials, if we talk about it long enough and it becomes the center of our reality and we discuss it and we go over it and over it and over it again, then I think that there is something in the universe that kind of takes what our thoughts are and helps manifest them in different ways, or attracts those beings and powers to us. I've been reading a book that's been on my to-do list for several years by an author by the name of George Hansen. It's a book called The Trickster and the Paranormal. And as I've been reading through this book, and and I've read doctoral level books. This one is really confounding. I have a tough time with it. I'm really having a hard time understanding it, to the point that this morning when I was in it, I was reading it out loud because I absorb better that way. And I'm hoping that nobody can hear me when I'm doing that, because I feel like I look like a clown. But in any event, he talks about reflexivity. And I really believe that Jackie and I have both found that there's a phenomenon which you may be aware of, and some of your viewers may be aware of, called the Chicago Mothman, or Lake Michigan Mothman, which has come to prominence over the last 10 years or so in the Chicago area. And we began investigating it with the Illinois State Director for MUFON, Sam Moranto, back several years ago when it was beginning to come to prominence, 2017, 18, 19, thereabouts. And we didn't find a lot of legitimacy to the actual reports. And frankly, it seemed pretty contrived. And we could go into that ad nauseum, but I won't. What we did find is that there is a strange undercurrent to reports that have come up in the Chicagoland area. They have correlations to some of the sightings that happened in Point Pleasant. And it doesn't look like they're done in a way that they're just taking information and saying, oh, this happened here too. We're finding numerical coincidences. We're finding inverse numbers like 13 and 31 occurring in different spots. And it seems as though, and I don't think that it's a legitimate thing that's happening in terms of Mothman in the Chicago area, but I do think that there is some other intelligence at work kind of below the scenes that's being activated somehow by what's going on, or perhaps activating the people who are having whatever perceptions they're having, and the authors who are getting involved with it, almost in a way that they're manifesting something that's beyond our comprehension. And I hope that made sense.
Yeah, I think so. Jackie, did you want to jump in on that?
Well, I agree with what Bill was saying. And this whole Chicago Mothman thing is so strange, because you would have to be genius level to have planned out for several years to write the reports in the places for them to have all of this strange undercurrent that's going on. And I don't think anybody's going to spend that kind of time. I mean, who's got that kind of time to, and so when we were literally investigating some of that, one of the things we did a spirit box session in Robinson Woods. And while the questions were being asked, one of the questions were, what does 13 and 31 have to do with it? Because there are tons of 13s and 31s in Point Pleasant, in Chicago. And it's the spirit box said a place to go visit. So that literally took us, when we looked for a place to go visit that was in West Virginia, was a little suburb outside of Parkersburg where there had been Mothman sightings, where there had been UFOs, where there's been alien experiences, to an intersection of 13 and 31. We did a spirit box session there, not Bill and I, but me and one of my friends did a spirit box session there. That literally took us back to Two-Windy Way Park in Point Pleasant. And the words that were given to us there were a key, bones, tin box or something. I mean, obelisk or something. I mean, just all these, I can't remember. I'd have to look at, because we have the notes, but there's so many things. And when you go back to Point Pleasant, it's like, it's Two-Windy Way. Cornstalk's buried. He's got like 7 bones remaining, and they have been put in a box and buried. And there's a 10-foot obelisk for Cornstalk's memorial in Two-Windy Way Park. And that's at the confluence of the point at Point Pleasant. So, I mean, it started in Chicago and it took us back to Point Pleasant.
Okay, that is really, really bizarre. So, Jackie, are you then a paranormal researcher? Did this start with you after that you're being pulled along with Bill to look into Mothman, and now you are talking about spirit boxes and things now, or is this something you were into beforehand?
That started after we went to Point Pleasant, and I'll tell you, I have had so much. The reason it is because I've had so much weird stuff happen to me over my lifetime that when this stuff happens, it's kind of like with me, I'm kind of like, that was weird, but it doesn't really add up in my brain until later, like, okay, so that couldn't have happened and shouldn't have happened. Like what you have for your tag, it's 3:33 somewhere. My dad passed away within a month of his passing at 3:33 a.m. My dad's yelling, Jackie, Jackie. And I sat straight up in bed, and it's like, and I see 3:33 all the time. And it's not like I'm looking for it. I just like, it happened today again. I'm like pulling in somewhere, and I look, and the sign says, the clock there in this other town says 3:33. And it's like, okay, it's 3:33, but so yeah, I've had so many weird things happen that, how can you not want to know more? I mean, that's how I am. How can I not want to know more? I mean, I was raised with being told that my eyes were playing tricks on me, that it's my imagination. And I had heads on the dresser when I was a kid. My sister saw them too. We shared a bedroom. My mom refused to believe that we saw that. All 4 of me and my brother and sisters woke up at the same time. I'm like little tiny 3-4-year-old, woke up, went to our bedroom doors, looked down the end of the hallway, and Jesus is standing there, an apparition of Jesus. That's my very first memory of something paranormal. And it's just been like stuff like that my entire life. So I want to know, what is this? Do I see things that other people can't see? I know I can see things my husband can't see. I can stand right beside him and he doesn't see it, but and I get angry. I saw a UFO. Like you were talking about the UFO. Mine wasn't triangular black. It was huge silver. It was like Harriet that we interviewed in our book. She saw the same one when she was a kid. She had missing time. I don't know if I ever had missing time. I don't know what I had. I just know that I've had so many experiences. And you were talking about the mounds. An interview that we had just done. We just completed it, and I'm transcribing it. And this person we interviewed grew up on Indian mounds. It was a burial ground where she grew up. And I used the TV. I put them on YouTube, and I use the TV for transcribing because the remote works really well for that. And I get to the part in her story where her boyfriend and her brother left and went out to the car, and it's pouring down rain because they got into her and her boyfriend got in a fight. And she looks outside, and she's like mad because her brother left with her boyfriend and left her home in this house that she's scared to be in anyway. And she said, like in 5 minutes, they came flying in the house screaming, what the hell was it? What was that? But what happened with me is and it could have been coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidence anymore. There was like a vapor, like if you see in the desert where you could see the heat and the vapor coming up from the heat. Her brother described a black vapor that was surrounding the car, and the rain was hitting the vapor, not the window of the car. So that's what they ran in the house screaming, what the hell is that? So as I'm typing up this black vapor part and moving over the car, the TV goes black, completely black, power gone, everything. I tried resetting. I tried everything I could possibly think of to fix that television, and nothing fixed it. I had to buy a new television. So it's like, and I mean, it could be coincidence. It really could. I might be reaching, but when it happened, I'm like, interesting.
Well, I can't help but to have this feeling that as modern, contemporary, whatever you want to peg us as, human beings on this planet, somewhere in our history, we were stripped of a supernatural existence or a belief. Now, I think that I've been reading the Bible and things like this. I've been listening to lectures and stuff. And that book is so supernatural and has so many paranormal things in that book.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's like, I think it's the first DSM. It's the first psychology manual on how humans operate, right? With a supernatural, worldview. But that's been stripped out, so much so I don't think that the churches even talk about it that much anymore. It's more about community and welcoming everybody and all this stuff. And it seems like the rest of it's kind of been pushed off to the side. Now, I'm not saying UFOs are demons and all that. I mean, everybody's got their own views on how that works. I have no idea. But I can't help but to feel that if we could talk to our great grandparents right now, they would still talk about Fey mounds and, a whole different type of existence than we've been basically cut off from. And then when we see these things or have something happen to us, it's like, what just happened? Now, to your point, and you guys can feel free to comment on that as much as you want, but to your point about the 333, it's 333 somewhere. Diane had asked in chat a while ago, what does that mean? Why do I have that? After Michelle and I had our experience in 2018, I've got screen captures on my phone of every night for like a month straight. I woke up at 3:33 for no reason whatsoever.
Yep.
None. And then it just kind of trailed off. And then I just stopped taking screenshots of it because I'm at work. The kids get out of my classroom at 3:20. I'm thinking about leaving. I'm fixing things up to leave my classroom. I look over, I start to walk out, look at my phone. It's 3:33. I mean, we're out somewhere, check the time, it's 3:33. I mean, it's like this number keeps on showing itself. And so to your point, it's like, wow. And one of our experiencers that we've had on the show a few times now, Guy Merritt, he saw a triangle. He was one of the first people that contacted us, and his experience was absolutely horrible. And it wasn't so much him as it was people that he worked with that were abducted. And one lady eventually became pregnant. So it was, and then had a child. She wasn't supposed to be able to get pregnant. She had a child, and the kid is a brainiac. So we can get, more into that later. Like, so I don't know. Did you want to comment on the whole supernatural 333 thing? Because I can go like Bill. I can just start rambling and go on for an hour at least.
I think it's supernatural, and I don't know if that was my dad, but it was his voice, so I'm not sure. But I was the same way. I woke up at 3:33 every night for I can't tell you how long, and I still do to this day. If I wake up at 3:33, I always think it's Dad trying to tell me to pay attention because something's going on. And I also have 555 that became something in my life after I can when I meditate, I can get into the state where I almost would be trance-like state, but I don't know. I have to like really get into a deep meditation, but I have dead people come to me. And my brother came to me, and I was trying, what I have been trying to do is talk to my dad, because I want to know what he woke me up for. What was he trying to tell me, you know? And so my brother, he died of a heart attack when he was 56 years old in the middle of the night. And he came, and it's like, first it wasn't him, it was somebody else. And I think it was my grandpa. And it's like, but I don't know. But then my brother shows up, and I'm telepathically communicating with him. And it was 5:55, you know? So then every time I see 555, I know that it's my brother, and something, you know, I feel like it's my brother, that he's poking at me. I'll see cigarette smoke, or I'll smell cigarettes here in the house by myself. I was smelling cigars the other day, and I don't know who smokes cigars, but I smell my brother a lot, especially around, his birthday was March 5th, and he died on March 19th. So a lot of times, my dad died February 5th, my brother died in, you know, March. So like that whole time, it gets real strange. Bill had an injury, and I'm sitting at the breakfast bar, and he's sitting in the recliner chair recuperating. And there was an orange on the breakfast bar, and we have quartz countertops. So like you just not like nothing's going to bang and move an orange. And the thing came rolling towards me and stopped like an inch from my arm. And I said to him, this orange just rolled at me. And he's like, so yeah, our house is haunted. We need to have an exorcism. And he's thinking it's funny because he's on morphine. He's like, he had a serious injury. But I mean, we live in a brand new house on field. It was a field, and it was built for us to move into, and we've had so many strange things happen here. So there's something with the numbers, and it's either somebody has 222s, 11 or 1111. You know, they say it's an angel number. I don't know. 5's the number of magic. I don't know what 3 is, but 333. Some say it's the bewitching hour or whatever. Or Bill called it something else, like the double hour or something. It's like, I don't hate to think that my dad went to hell, and he's trying to tell me, straighten up, Jackie, or you're going to end up here too. No.
Right. Bill, you want to jump in?
Well, something you mentioned a few minutes ago has been resonating with me, and that was a thought that I'd shared with you maybe a half hour ago, and that was about Carolyn Harris. You'd mentioned the word great-grandparents. I was raised by my mom and my great-grandmother. My parents were divorced when I was 6 years old. And so I learned basically from a lady who was born in 1888 and was 40 years old during the Great Depression. You better clean your plate because you never know where your next meal is going to come from. And we lived on my mom's basically minimum wage type job, and my great-grandmother's Social Security, the little bit that it was. So we didn't have a lot of money, so to speak. What I didn't understand when I met Carolyn was that she reminded me so much of my great-grandmother and her siblings, who I was really raised with. So I was a little kid between 6 really and 17 years old, who was being raised by a lady who was 80 when she came to live with us, and 97 when she passed away. Carolyn reminded me so much of her and her sisters that when she died, I felt like my great-grandmother died all over again. And I'm 56 now. So really, when she passed away when I was 19, that was really the most significant death that's happened in my life. My mom and dad are both still with us, thankfully. So losing Carolyn was like losing a family member. And that resonated with me the most. I could never understand why at the end of the Small Town Monsters documentary about Mothman in Point Pleasant, that it would bring me to tears when they'd mention Carolyn, because she felt like a family member. So that was one piece I wanted to share with you from earlier in our conversation. The second part was when you were talking about the Bible and the scriptures. And there is so much mystical power that's in the Bible, but today's traditional, and I guess I'm going to say Protestant, because I've been raised and continue to practice in the Protestant denominations, have really kind of taken all the mysticism element away from worship. But there is a huge mystical power that goes back into Orthodoxy and into Catholicism that you can really pull from, where I think that there's a hierarchy of angels and spirits and powers that are out there that aren't all dark. I mean, today's Christianity, especially on the fundamental side, talks about everything in black and white terms. I don't think life is in black and white terms at all. There are all kinds of different gradations. And just because we don't understand a certain power doesn't make it evil. Should we be wary if we're trying to encounter it? Oh, absolutely. But I don't think it's all dark, and I don't think it's all negative. And that really kind of feeds into, I think, the way that Jaci and I approach what we do with our work.
Well said. Everybody, we are joined once again. This is Bill and Jaci Kousoulas, and they are the authors of Bridging the Tragedy, Silver Linings in the Mysterious Ohio Valley. And we're going to get to this silver linings, because I think this will lead us into what you mean by, I want to say it's post-traumatic growth is the psychological term, but we'll get to that in a few. Let's go with this. What skills from your background do you think you found the most useful when talking to people in Point Pleasant and conducting your research? And by the way, I think Carolyn, somewhere you guys were connected with the way that you guys were both explaining how she wanted to talk to you guys. You didn't know who she was. I think there was some type of a connection there. And with people, sometimes you just know when you've found that right person, a soulmate on a different level kind of a thing. My wife and I joke about, our work wives. There's these people at work that you just, or wherever you're at, you can just feel that connection with. And it sounds like she had that with you guys. So what about your skills though? Like what in your backgrounds do you find helped you with dealing with the people with your research about Mothman and Point Pleasant?
I think, at least for me, in addition to understanding how to conduct doctoral level research and do qualitative analysis and write at that level, the most important part I think that both Jaci and I share is a genuine empathy and concern for the people who we interview. And in going through the interview process with the 11 people who participated in Bridging the Tragedy, we treated all of them respectfully, kindly, not like we were authority figures, because we're not. I mean, we're researchers. Jaci is an experiencer, a profound experiencer. So she has that in common with the people that we, have visited with, not all of whom were paranormal experiencers, but certainly dealt with loss in the Silver Bridge disaster. So I think just the element of being on the same page as the people we talked to, treating them kindly and with respect, and asking them open-ended, genuine questions, and encouraging them not to go down a certain rabbit hole path with us because we're looking for something in particular, but because it's really important for us to learn what their experiences are, because that's what contributed legitimacy to the study and made it a genuine work. Those are my thoughts. I'd like to hear what Jaci thinks.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, basically, I don't even know what to say with that, because as far as interviewing people,
I just get a feeling like both of you are like empaths. I just get the sense of your ability to connect with people, and it's on a different level.
I mean, I know that I am. I'm built. I pick up people's emotions all the time. When I walk into a room, I can feel the energy. Somebody was just asking me the other day, like with paranormal stuff. We did a paranormal investigation in Ohio, and when we walked in the back door, I got right into the hallway, and I felt like somebody hit me in the gut. And I get that feeling a lot, where I feel like somebody's punched me in the gut when there's something that is different or off. And then when we were done with the investigation, we're like, okay, well, what were we even doing here? Because we didn't know what was going on there. And she showed a video of this little orb that had been following this little boy around. And it was in the hallway right where I had the feeling of getting punched in the gut. So there's like some type of a spirit that was there. But yeah, picking up on people's emotions, definitely. So when people, I mean, you can tell when to stop. You can tell when to not ask certain things, not to pry. And other times you know to delve deeper. And, you feel, I don't know, like a safe feeling. Like I feel safe enough to ask you this, and I know you feel safe enough to answer it, kind of a thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Let's switch gears for a second here. I noticed that both you and Bill have, as part of your tagline, is it Phenomenology Research Professionals?
Yes.
Okay. I got it right. I was worried there for a minute. So why was that formed, or what is that? And is there a certain methodology to your research then that you've discovered, over the years that works best?
Well, phenomenology, because it's the study of phenomenon, and there's so much phenomenon that, I mean, our study right now is just like so vague that I told Bill that I'm like, we're really going to have to tighten it up somehow, because when you ask a person, of their trauma and their paranormal activity, the different types of activity, the different types of phenomenon that are out there. We've done 3 interviews so far. And one of them was somebody that's dealt with, seeing orbs, faces in orbs and all kinds of haunted stuff. She's the one that I was talking about with the vapor over the car. Another one was an interview with someone who has somebody who is remote viewing her, like astral traveling to her and sexually attacking her and other types of stuff like that. And she's become highly psychic since this has started with her. She's able to read people, and she never could do that before. And then our third interview was with Reverend Michael Carter, and he's had all kinds of aliens coming to him in his bedroom. And he talked to us about the different aliens and the different things that had happened. And he told us too, he was very comfortable and felt like he could go way deeper in with us than he could other people. So that's why we selected the phenomenology part and the research part of it, because we wanted also to add the post-traumatic growth, because that's something we're both very passionate about, that we have grown so much before we even met each other. But since we've met each other, we've grown so much. And, Bill's a professional. I'm a retired postmaster. I'm a professional. And we try to handle ourselves professionally when we're doing the process, while we're working with the people. So,
Bill, did you want to jump in on this?
Yeah. So there are 5 different schools of qualitative analysis. And when I say qualitative analysis, that's more experiential than quantitative analysis, which is based more on numbers, statistics, and surveys. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and there's certainly a place for that in scientific research. But for who I am, and I think who Jaci is as well, doing the qualitative approach is really more holistic and probably more natural for us. And you can go deeper into conversations than simply a survey question is going to be able to do. But in the 5 different schools of research, the one that I'm the most comfortable with is called grounded theory. And grounded theory is probably, interestingly enough, the one that's more positivist or numbers oriented of all the other qualitative measures. So we're not even really using phenomenology. That's really just more of the overarching picture of what we do. Grounded theory basically takes the research questions. We formulate questions like with Bridging the Tragedy. What are the dimensions of post-traumatic growth that you experienced as a result of the Silver Bridge disaster? The second question was, what are the dimensions of post-traumatic growth you've experienced as a result of the paranormal encounters you've had, including Mothman, UFOs, et cetera, et cetera. So by using that methodology, it's basically based upon conversational interviews. So we interviewed all the different people, and then we go through a very rigorous coding process, which means we take every line of every transcribed interview and we assign it with a meaning unit. And those meaning units for the first book, there were 2,200 of them in total. But we had to certainly narrow that down some. So it's almost like a filtering process. So if you can kind of envision, trying to think of what the name of it is, a funnel. You envision a funnel at the top, you've got 2,200 initial codes. Then you've got to filter those into what are known as focused codes, which are categories. So when Mark Griffith told us he was, afraid that there was this Mothman thing going on, we might say, code that line with the word fear. Well, then maybe Susan Sayer indicated she was scared, so we'd put her code in her sentence into that fear category. So once we established those focus codes, we had 110 of those. We ended up filtering them down into theoretical codes, were 16 different categories, which became the dimensions of post-traumatic growth that we were able to get from the participants in the study. So the approach itself is one it's based upon the conversation, it's based upon systematic analysis and narrowing a funnel, and then coming up with using theory from the past, post-traumatic growth theory. We didn't come up with that, but we applied that to the study to determine what good came from the things that happened in 66 and 67 in the greater Ohio River Valley.
Okay, so then I take it that by post-traumatic growth, your definition, well, not your definition, but the definition of that would be, how has somebody changed for the better after some type of a traumatic experience? Am I close?
You're right on. You're right on the money.
Okay. All right, cool. That brings me to Aaron's Energy 313, who says that I know I am generally a better person since my awakening, not so judgmental, more open-minded, and I am happier and I have more faith, etc. Is this the kind of growth you are speaking of with people that go through these traumatic experiences?
Absolutely. In fact, in Bridging the Tragedy, one of the 16 dimensions that were identified were spiritual growth. So a matter of, we have people in the West Virginia area, especially in the 1960s, right smack dab in the middle of the Bible Belt, are already they're already religious. They're already faithful people. They're already living upright type lives. But to go through the tragedy that they went through, and some of them certainly losing family members, and if not family members, certainly friends, that it brought them together deeper. And I would say over half of the people that we interviewed talked about their faith having grown as a result of what they'd been through.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, Jackie, did you want to jump in on that a little bit?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Great. So I got one right tonight, so that's awesome. So okay. One of the most recent things that happened was this check my notes, Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse, Baltimore, March 24th, 2024. Was there any Mothman sightings or anything like that may have happened, or that you guys have heard of, or anything like that was seen before this incident took place?
It's relatively recent, but interestingly enough, I've heard nothing on the paranormal front at all. And you would think that if there were even an inkling of it, that some researcher would have grabbed onto it immediately and ran with it. So I'm not saying that there hasn't been anything reported, but if there has, I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
And when that went down, Harriet Plumbrook, she was one of the people we interviewed from Mound, West Virginia. She sent that right away, and sent it. We have a chat group on Facebook or a Messenger, and with her and Andy and Bill and I, and they were the two Mound, West Virginia people, and they had the most paranormal activity or experiences as anybody that we interviewed. And I sent her back a message and I said, I just keep watching it over and over, trying, looking at it, trying to see what I can see and see if I can see what the heck happened. Is because we didn't know what happened. Really, we heard there was SOS calls and stuff. And she said her too. She was doing the exact same thing I was doing. And so it's like you want to see if you can see something, because at least it would be, you know what I mean? You want to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know hasn't there been other sightings of Mothman? Like, one of the chats I have starred here was from Nain again, and it was about other Mothman appearances. And wasn't there something to do with Chernobyl before the nuclear plant disaster? Is that true?
That's kind of falls into the category of what I would call urban legend. And even Richard Haddam, who was integral in the Mothman Prophecies movie, has said that he thinks that meme is something he generated, that he had written for the movie itself. I have heard varying reports that counter that there may be something of substance to it. But I know that Richard Haddam, who was, I think, the screenwriter for that movie, said he thinks he made that up. So I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm not sure where that all lies. I've tried to go deeper into it, but I've not found a whole lot of substance to back it up.
One of the things that dawned on me was the description of Mothman being like a humanoid, large, bright eyes, red eyes, and moth wings. Is it possible people are mistaking like some type of a giant owl or something like that? Because I know owls are very paranormal, right? And they have a very, I don't want to say paranormal, but they have a mythology that encompasses them as well. Is there any connection to an owl, perhaps?
Well, it's been said, but my question always is to the person that says that is, name one owl that can fly up to 100 miles an hour.
Good point.
And that is literally in the Mothman Museum, and it's handwritten by the witnesses that they were driving at speeds of over 100 miles an hour on Route 62. So, wow. Yeah. So I don't know that any owl can fly. And I've seen some pretty big owls on Facebook, especially, but I don't buy that. And I don't buy the sandhill crane. And the other thing too, with all of that stuff, Denny Bellamy, he's the director of the Mason County Visitors Bureau in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. We interviewed him and he said, people don't understand. This is an outdoor state. When hunting season opens, 250,000 men, women, and children get out and start hunting. They all shoot. They all hunt. They know what an owl looks like. They know what a sandhill crane looks like. They know what they're shooting. So all these people that want to say it was something other than what was reported by the witnesses, the eyewitnesses, I think they are just trying to shut down anything that sounds scary to the people that can't handle it.
But in fairness to Wayne's question, there were a lot of people who had made the assertion that it was perhaps a barred owl or a sandhill crane. There was actually a professor, I think from West Virginia University, who really debunked the whole Mothman story by claiming it was a sandhill crane. But the witnesses really pushed back against that. And like Jackie said, they're an outdoors state. They know their birds. They know their animals. And we haven't really gotten into what Mothman can or cannot be. But long story short, I don't think that Mothman is a corporeal being. I think it's more of a spiritual energy, or perhaps an energy being, or something from a different realm that we can't really describe because we don't know what it is. And Denny said if it were a physical being, we would have killed it by now, because we hunt and we hunt hard and we're good at it.
Yeah. Aaron's Energy asks a question. I'm not familiar with this. Your thoughts on Indrid Cold? I don't know what that is or who that is, if it's a person.
Do you want to take that, honey, or you want me to?
No, because I want you to go for it.
Okay.
All right.
Indrid Cold is a really fascinating aspect of the whole Mothman story. In the Mothman Prophecies movie, Indrid Cold and the Mothman are basically combined into one entity. That's the way that it's portrayed. And really, Indrid Cold in the movie is a voice on the telephone who's disguised himself somehow and made it look like he is one of the other characters in the movie, uses his voice, does all kinds of strange things, and gives prophecies to John Klein, or Richard Gere's character. In the book, The Mothman Prophecies, Indrid Cold is an entirely different entity, really contemporary with Mothman, but not the same thing, at least not the way that it's described. So before Mothman was sighted in West Virginia in November, I think it was the 10th. On November the 10th, Woody Derenberger, who was an appliance salesman, was driving in his equipment van after a hard day's work. He was headed home towards, I think, Mineral Wells, which is in the Parkersburg area, to go home. And he noticed the vehicle behind him was approaching him pretty rapidly and went to go past him. But it wasn't a car. It didn't go around, the left-hand side, went over the top of him, and then landed in the road in a vehicle that is described as, is it a lantern? Did I get it right this time?
It's like an old oil lamp lantern shade is what it looked like turned on its side.
Turned on its side. And this being got out of the craft, and Woody Derenberger stopped his vehicle. And as this being got out of the craft, Woody described it as a young man, mid-30s, black hair, slicked back, had his hands underneath his armpits. And he began telepathically communicating with Woody and basically said, hey, don't be afraid. I cut and bleed just as you do. And I'm from a country much less powerful than yours. And of course, Woody is terrified. But this being is trying to calm him down through suggestion. And they stayed engaged for several minutes, and they kept communicating back and forth. And at the end of their exchange, this entity said, my name is Cold. And then after that, he took off, and Woody went home, and his wife was noticing how freaked out Woody was, and she sent the kids to bed. He told her what happened, and she asked him, do you think you'll see this guy again? And he said, I hope not, but I think I will. And then over the course of the next several years, Woody claimed that he was visited by Indrid Cold and his associates time and time again, even to the point that they took him in their spaceship to their home planet, which he described ad nauseum in different interviews. Basically, he was the only one that had clothes on when he went to this planet. Everybody else was stark naked. And so finally he disrobed so that he would fit in with the rest of them. I mean, it really sounds like a far-fetched tale, but he literally went on a newscast the next morning and reported over the television that he had this experience. So this thing was broadcast. He's the very first contactee really to receive that type of notoriety. Perhaps Betty and Barney Hill were before that, but he's one of the more celebrated in history.
Oh, okay. Man, this story is deep. There's a lot of facets to Mothman and the whole history of that region. It is fascinating. Speaking of UFOs and going down that road for a little bit, have you guys looked into UFO encounters and some of the trauma that people have suffered from their experiences? And do you see like any similarities between the trauma and even the post traumatic or post trauma, the good stuff, the growth, related to like the Silver Bridge and UFOs? Is there some kind of connection there?
In bridging the tragedy, Harriet was the only one that reported having missing time as a result of her UFO encounter. But Harriet, we haven't really talked about her a lot, is really probably the most fascinating person that we've interviewed so far. She is profoundly psychic. She's just amazing. So when she described the Key Bridge disaster that you were just talking about, she talked about how it brought back all the feelings associated with the Silver Bridge disaster. She was just a little kid when that happened, but that resonated with her significantly, as did the UFO encounter that she had and the gifts that she thinks that she's received as a result of those encounters. Interestingly enough, she and Andy, who both lived in Mound, West Virginia, Andy Colvin, who is probably the world's foremost Mothman authority when it comes to research and John Keel's work, the two of them were both in grade school together. And during the whole Mothman phenomena, they were observed by who they believe to be FBI or other alphabet agency type individuals as being part of a cadre of genius kids. So the two of them, along with a bunch of other kids who were allegedly exposed to some of this paranormal stuff that was going on, they have IQs that are off the charts. And like I mentioned, Harriet is profoundly psychic. So there were a number of other people that we talked to for Bridging the Tragedy, including Denny Bellamy, who saw a UFO. Linda Lane saw a UFO. Did Charlene Westwood tell us that she did also?
Above her house, yeah.
She did too. And even though Carolyn never made it into our book, except in the dedication, because we dedicated it primarily to Carolyn Harris, she saw the beautiful lights in the sky also. None of them necessarily talked about trauma. However, Reverend Michael Carter did when we interviewed him for our next book. And so he talked about the experiences that he's had. They have not been all traumatic. Some of them were, especially the initial contacts that he had. But I think, although we haven't analyzed his interview yet, because we really need to conduct the rest of the interviews before we go into the analysis phase, we're going to find some of the growth that he's had, some of the development that he's had, becoming a multi-book published author and television celebrity now. And I think he leads his parishioners from a sense of empathy that's deeper than it was prior to his encounter. So I think he's definitely grown as a result of some of the traumatic things that have come out of his encounters as well.
Okay. Jackie, did you want to add?
Well, I was thinking of Harriet, and when she had her UFO encounter, her mom told her she had been looking for her for quite some time. Harriet thought she was outside for maybe 20 minutes playing in the woods. She had a huge missing time episode during that. And after that, she had, if you watch the X-Files, she had the scully marks on the back of her neck, like scully.
Really?
Yes. And when she talked to her mom about it, her mom said, oh, that happened when you were born or something, like she had always had it. But Harriet knew that she didn't have those marks. So that was something that I don't want to say that she like distrusted her mother from that, but it made her question why her mom would tell her something like that when she was a kid that knew she didn't have it. And then she was just, her mom's like upset because she couldn't find her for a couple hours when she had just gone outside for a very short time. And
right.
So she did have that type of trauma. I don't think she came right out and said it was trauma, but when she was talking about it, you could see that it was something that did affect her, and I don't know that she was a genius level kid until after some of this other stuff that had happened with seeing the UFOs. And, Andy didn't see a UFO, but his sister did. And he lived in the same house, but he had Men in Black experiences. So, were they alien men that were there? They hypnotized the entire family, but Andy, for some reason, didn't get hypnotized. He was small. He doesn't remember exactly what was said, but he remembers that they weren't supposed to talk about what the Men in Black were doing in their house even. He remembers that's why everybody's mind was wiped, but he remembers them being there, and he remembers 3 of them standing in front of the couch with the entire family sitting there. I don't know. Are the Men in Black coming from these UFOs? Does Mothman come off of a UFO? That's the whole thing.
Right.
Margie Kay, she runs, I don't think she runs the MUFON in Missouri, but she is part of MUFON in Missouri. And she also has the NX network. And I believe was talking to us. We did a presentation for the Chicago Mothman for her, and I think that she was talking about that she talked to someone that said they saw a Mothman creature either come out of a UFO or go into a UFO. So
fascinating.
I know. It's like, so what is it? What is it? I mean, I've changed my opinion of what Mothman might be so many times that, and the same what a UFO might be and what an apparition walking through our backyard. I mean, like literally it's all so confusing that just having that stuff going on in your head is traumatic.
Yes. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I've flip-flopped so many times trying to figure out what is going on, and in my scientific mind, I want to be more of the quantitative data person, not the qualitative, but all Michelle and I have is qualitative data about what happened to us, and then I have the physical effects of what happened. But it kind of, I don't know, Bill, I saw you start to speak. So why don't you go ahead and add on, and then I'll get back to my other point. Go ahead.
I just wanted to share with you guys that although I don't think Harriet says this, I don't remember her saying it. Andy really believes that Harriet is the inspiration for the Agent Scully character in the X-Files.
Oh.
Because he had a, back in the day, late 90s, early 2000s, he had a webpage devoted to discussion about Mothman. And he said that he has learned that some of the authors, the writers for the X-Files, were kind of scraping the data from what he was posting and taking ideas from it. So he really thinks that Harriet was the inspiration for the Agent Scully character. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah.
If it's
yeah, right. But there has been talk about movie producers and things like that to get ideas. Go to like the National UFO Reporting Center, and they go through the MUFON files and look for stories for writing on. So, I mean, I would not put that past them at all.
Sure.
Okay. Guy Merritt asks a question. He says he wonders what you guys think about abductions. A lot of researchers, bizarrely, don't even think they're real. And then I had a question here that was basically about that. What do you think about the different types of experiences people report? I call it the hippie and the medical abduction. The hippie one is where they get taken in a UFO. They're part of a galactic universe, some type of a council, and they're here to help us, and they're going to save us from killing ourselves and protect the planet and all that. And then you've got the other people, Terry Lovelace, Guy Merritt, who's with us right now, that are more like they get a cold, medical, mechanical feeling. It's almost a demonic experience. They're harvesting embryos. There's hybrids. There's implants. And there's like this dichotomy, almost like there is different types of species, or they have different agendas doing things to us. And then there's the whole group of people that are like, they're not aliens. It's us, that it's a different race of humans that are hiding away underneath the ocean and things like that. So as we start to wrap this up, I just want to get your thoughts on what you guys think about that dichotomy, that weird, which goes into your head, Jackie, to your point, which just makes you more traumatized trying to figure it out as your brain tries to build structure in our little framework of our world views, and it just starts to break our, I don't know, your psychology, your psyche. So what do you guys think?
Well, I'm really good at catching them up, which is not a good thing to do. But if someone is, if their story doesn't make sense and I ask questions, and then it's like, okay, so you can literally catch some of the people, and that they're just trying to get attention or whatever it is.
Sure.
And some people, like you'll hear their story, and I'll say to Bill, it's like, do you think they're crazy? That's my first thing. Do you think they're crazy? And that's the same shit I was raised with, is there must be something wrong with her, And then I back up right away, and I'm like, go to where I should be. And I'm to the place where I say that I can't discount anybody's story, because a lot of the stuff that's happened to me sounds crazy. It literally sounds crazy. So for me to think somebody is crazy is like calling myself crazy, just like my mother was, when I was a kid. So, yeah, I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And when we're doing interviews, I don't ever like call somebody out and say that they're nuts or they're crazy or whatever. I literally listen because they're opening their hearts up to us. They're telling their story. They're sharing their story. They want to help other people if they can. And they're fascinating. They're just flat out fascinating to talk to. When we were talking to Reverend Michael Carter at the end of it, and I haven't even started transcribing his, but I remember at the end that he was talking about, these aliens that would be like in a space at night. And, I didn't see aliens. I saw a UFO. I've seen a Darrow, what I think is a Darrow when I was a kid. That's the only way I can describe it. And I didn't know what a Darrow was when I was a kid. I learned about it.
What is a Darrow?
It's a robotic. Let's see. A Darrow stands for detrimentic. Help me out here. What's it?
There was a guy by the name of Richard Shaver who claimed that there were these under earth type entities he described as detrimental robots, or Darrow.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
They're in Arizona in the desert, and they live under the ground. And I mean, they're robotic looking. And I had like this thing, me and my cousins and my siblings saw it. And we ran in the house and told our moms, and because they were playing cards and drinking iced tea like they did, and they told us to go back out and play. And we're like, we're not going back outside. We were scared to death by this thing. So, so you have that. And then, so when Reverend Michael Carter was talking about stuff, it's like, I don't know what that was. I know that my parents saw UFOs. I know that I saw UFOs. I lived out in an area where there were Bigfoot sightings. There was all this stuff going on. Stuff still happens to this day. And then Reverend Carter said that something about the heat that comes from his hands, his need to do Reiki on people. And it's like, so all these different things that he talked about, it's like, oh my God, it's like I have more in common with somebody else that's had some experiences, because I literally am a Reiki master, and the heat that comes from my hands when I'm doing Reiki on people is unbelievable. And it's not coming from me. It's coming from something far beyond me. I'm just the carrier of it, and so how is that? How is he telling my story? And I've never spoken with him ever until we interviewed him.
Yeah. Yep. Bill, do you want to jump in?
Well, to answer your question earlier, Michael told us about various races that had visited him. He talked about the Nordics. He talked about the Greys. He talked about reptilians. There was another one that was more insectoid. So there were all kinds of different types of aliens that have visited him. And I just have to believe that there are different peoples, so to speak, that do have different agendas. So I think some of them probably are hippies, like Valiant Thor was described to be, peace and love, or even Indrid Cold for that matter. The way he was really depicted by Woody Derenberger was really more of an ambassador of peace. I mean, he referred to himself as a searcher, somebody who was out there searching for different peoples and such. So I think that there are different races that have different agendas.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, like, I'm with you, Jackie. I don't discount anybody, because what do Michelle and I have other than this fascination with what we saw, to the point of starting a show and meeting people like you, and putting your information out there for people to research on their own if they've had these same kind of things. And it seems like so many people have been affected by this. And and perhaps it's some kind of a something to bring us back to our roots. I don't know. It just seems like we're so far removed from what we were as human beings with all this technology and everything that, people don't go outside much anymore, especially after the pandemic. It's like everybody's living through the world of the virtual, and it just seems very sad. And maybe some of these things are waking us up. I don't know, but I have a question I have to put up for you, and this is from one of our watchers and listeners, Rick Davis. He says Ray Szymanski, who is the author I was telling you about that wrote "Swamp Gas My Ass," about the 1966 UFO flap here in Ann Arbor and Washtenaw area. He'll be on with us next Sunday. Told him on one of the episodes to keep quiet, so Rick gets kind of really going in chat, and he wanted me to tell you, Jackie and Bill, that I saw a UFO. I think he's saying he saw one on request.
No, he summoned one.
He summoned a UFO on request, right? Yeah. Okay. So, and he was just curious as to what your response, what your thoughts are on that. And I believe is it Christopher Bledsoe that can do this as well, and has been visited by all kinds of people and Men in Black and the guys from Skinwalker Ranch, I believe, and all of that. So, Jackie, since Bill's having technical issues, what do you have to say?
Isn't that a CE5?
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, that's what CE5s are. I mean, they're trying to call aliens. John Keel literally, he didn't like summons it, but he was able to communicate with it through Morse code. So it's not, I don't think that they don't want to communicate. We're violent. This planet is violent. And I don't know that, I mean, they probably have the technology to kill us, but like, with me and Reverend Carter, we're healers now, So how do you come by that after you have an encounter?
Right.
So I think that there are loving types and healing types and angry types. And I pray to God that the good ones or whatever, I've heard there's so many different races. I don't know the facts of any of it because I don't have that information, but hopefully the good outweighs the bad of the races and we're being protected. And I think we're being protected from ourselves,
Yeah. Bill, did you want to jump in on that one?
Could you repeat the question again, please?
Yeah.
I got disconnected for a minute.
Rick Davis was told by our next week's guest, Ray Szymanski, who wrote that book, Swamp Gas My Ass. He told him on one of the episodes, because he likes to ask a lot of questions in chat, to keep quiet. But he wanted to tell you guys that he once made one appear or summoned one on request, a UFO that is. And he was just interested in what your responses were. So
I think isn't that what the CE5 community is all about?
That's exactly what Jackie had said. Yeah.
Yeah. And we do know some people who belong to that. In fact, Jesse, who we interviewed for our next book, is a CE5 communicator. And I'm connected to a number of other ones through Facebook, but we haven't really met. And through our association with MUFON, there are probably even more that I'm just not really aware of at this point in time. But I can't discount what other people are doing or what they're involved with. I mean, we can really just try to create an environment of empathy, to listen, to be able to tell their stories along the lines of what their subjective experience is. And we just work to bring more of a collective, objective angle to all of it so that we can report back a phenomenon.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I was just sitting here thinking, and as we are going to be wrapping this up here, I'm just sitting here thinking that Jackie, you were saying how you're now a healer, and if these experiences are having this post-traumatic growth. Do you think this is like a reversal that when we're having these kind of contacts, like these are certain abilities that people are being awakened to that they can do? As for Rick, being able to call down like in a CE5 event, or summon one of these things, and people to have Bigfoot experiences and things like that. These experiences change them in such a way that it's giving them these abilities then to do other things, healing in your case, for instance, or seeing dead people Bill doesn't see them, and things like that.
He actually did see one though. That was something that was unusual because it just doesn't happen. But I think that I don't even remember what I was going to say. What was your question again?
Basically, are these experiences awakening these things in people, putting us back in like this supernatural mindset or paranormal, whatever we want to call it?
Yeah. So what I was going to say was, I think that what happened with me, and I know that it happened with one of our other interviewees that we just did for the most recent study, is it has taken us out of the 3D self, 3D world, and moved us beyond it. And I see things that like Bill can't see. I can't even go into it. There's so much stuff that's happened that is not a typical 3D world type of stuff, that I think that when we have these experiences, and the more we open our minds to the fact that we have these experiences, whatever they may be, that there is more out there, and it just opens us up to a whole new level of life. I believe, for me, I think I'm well beyond the 3D, at least into the fourth and fifth dimension for sure, not 13th dimension or anything like that. But I do know that I have abilities that I didn't recognize. I think I had them when I was younger. I've always had this ability to know things without even knowing how or why. I just know it, and just believe me. Just believe me, because it's fact. Just like I knew that we needed to go in and talk to Carolyn. And so I think that happens. And I think that if you have it and you're not aware of it, or you can't define it, that when you have an experience like seeing a big silver UFO that's huge and above a farm, and it's not moving and it's just there, and you're literally driving at it and saying, what the hell is it? When you're by yourself in the car because you're just stumped by it, it makes you have to stop and think about what this whole thing that we're really doing is.
Yeah.
We call it life.
Right.
Yeah, I think we have these abilities. I think as a race, we always have. And being that the two of you are both teachers, the word education comes from the Greek root word, which I'll probably botch, but I think it's eduko. And it's not necessarily to impart knowledge to, but to help one bring about that voice within themselves that's already there, to educe it, basically. So I just think that we're coming upon a point in our existence, like you had talked about, where so many of us are just in the virtual world, like we are at this present moment, because we have to, because we're in Illinois and you're in Michigan. But to get out and actually experience life in 3D, the 4D, the 5D, it's still there. It's still an ability that we have, but it's dormant within us because we don't practice it, or we're taught not to.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. If we're never open to it, we're never going to get there. So, yep. All right. So what's on the horizon for you guys? You kept on dropping some hints about interviews that you're doing now, and something's coming up. What's going on?
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just waiting for you. Why don't you go ahead?
Our current study is based on how do I even want to put it? So it's, of course, we want to find the post-traumatic growth in what we're investigating. And the perimeters, I guess, for the study is you had to have experienced some type of trauma, and you've had to have some type of paranormal activity. So in order to qualify for the study, that's the only two qualifiers that you need to have. And that's what we're doing. And we're going to try to figure out, if my thing was, when I wanted to do this, it came up at the Mothman Festival where, like, at the end of our presentation, we're like asking questions like, we need your help. What would you rather have us study next? And it basically came up to the paranormal activity and the trauma. I was raised in a home where I found out that my of 4 children, and my mom started getting smacked around by my alcoholic father within 6 weeks of them getting married. So I was born into trauma. So I just kind of wondered, okay, so did that trauma that I was born into, did that trauma occur? I was raised in my dad and mom bought an old schoolhouse and they remodeled it, and that's the home we grew up in. So my question was, did the trauma...
I think we're losing them.
I was going to say said that they had power issues yesterday.
Yeah, storms going through the area and stuff. So we'll give them a few minutes to see if they drop off and drop back. But
wait a second, they're to the west of us. If they're getting storms, that means it's headed this way.
Yep. But since they're having technical issues right now, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's watching right now. All the new subscribers we've gotten so far over the last few days. Thank you,
great
guys.
Questions and discussions.
Oh my God. Awesome questions.
They have
guys.
Not been raptured, guy.
Yeah, they've been raptured. Yeah. All right, guy. Yeah, see, they just dropped. So they should be reconnecting. And I just want to say too, I will cover this with them. If they are able to jump back. If not, we'll wrap it up here. But I started a poll in the chat, and I see Bill's joining back in, asking, have you been traumatized by your UFO or paranormal experience? 23 of you have answered.
It was like
the question
65% to 35 the last time I looked.
Yeah, 65% of you said no, while 35% of you said, yes, you have been traumatized. So
get Bill back in here.
Yep, there's Bill. Bill is back. And I think, there you go. Yep. So just want to turn this back over to you guys talking about your future research and stuff before you cut out.
And how our listeners can get a hold of you or...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll finish the thought that I was talking about. So what I wanted to know was, does trauma bring paranormal activity, or does paranormal activity bring trauma? So that's what I was hoping to find out. I don't know if we will. We'll have to wait to see what happens with that. But that's what I want to know.
Okay. Bill?
Really the same thing. I mean, we're trying to see if there's a relationship between trauma and paranormal activity. We think there is. We think there's likely enough evidence for that. But again, like the first book, we're going to focus on the good things that come from it, which I think is kind of a novel approach, because there's so much sensationalism and fear in the paranormal. Yeah, that's going to be part of this. But the whole idea is to demystify all that stuff and focus on the good things, because we can all focus on our problems, but why don't we look at growth and use that trauma as a springboard to live a better life? And so that's the goal of this project, much in the same way as Bridging the Tragedy was for the first project.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been Bill and Jaci Kousoulas, the authors of Bridging the Tragedy, Silver Linings in the Mysterious Ohio Valley. Bill, Jaci, this has been awesome. I knew this was going to be one of my favorite shows to do over the years, and this has been amazing. So I just need to say thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you. You can find us, anybody who's interested in talking to us, please reach out to us. We're still looking for participants, you can reach us at prpconnect.org or through Facebook. We both are very active on Facebook, and we have our own Phenomenology Research Professionals page on Facebook as well. So by all means, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you.
Awesome. And I will update the show description with that email address. So anybody that watches us can email you at that email address. So,
our website, go ahead.
That is our website.
Oh, that's our website, not our email.
Our email is prpconnect@outlook.com.
Okay.
Yeah, I gave you our website. Sorry.
Well,
which you can go there too.
Yeah, I'll put them both in the show description. So once again, thank you guys very much for joining us. I learned a lot tonight. So now I want to go watch that Mothman Prophecies. And
now I want to go to West Virginia. I wish I had more of a voice tonight. So
yeah,
I truly enjoyed the show and listening to all the information. And I think we've got some travel destinations ourselves now.
Yep,
go to the
sure do.
Mothman Festival. It is a blast.
Yeah, when in September is it?
The third weekend.
Is it the third?
It's the 14th this year, isn't it? The 14th or 15th or something. They have a Facebook page, the Mothman Festival. Yeah.
All right. Well, once again, thank you guys for joining us. We'd love to have you guys come back on and talk more about your new research as that goes along. If you'd like to join us, just let us know.
Absolutely.
This has been great. Thank you for having us.
Yep. Thank you very much. And we will see you hopefully next time, sometime soon. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Take care.
All right, everybody. I knew it was going to be a good one. I told you. I'm excited. What a great couple and what great research they're doing. So, all right, everybody.
I'm telling you the creepy part. Where was I looking at home?
Dude, I didn't get a chance to tell Bill and Jackie, but before we were going live
in chat, and
we were looking in West Virginia without even thinking about it.
Because I was like, okay, top, 10 states or whatever, cheapest.
Top 10 states.
I was like, West Virginia is probably one of them. So I started looking at homes and beautiful homes.
Yeah.
And then here we start talking about West Virginia on the show.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yep. We're going to wrap this up because now I got to turn this around before we go to bed because we got to be up early. I got to turn this around into an audio podcast. So that takes a little bit of time. But yes, so 65% of you to the poll said, no, you have not been traumatized by your UFO or paranormal experience. But 34% of you said yes. And that was 23 votes. So everybody that's out there, thank you very much for joining us tonight. You guys were awesome. Chat was lively. New subscribers we saw coming in. Dorothy Hawkins, thank you for your super chat.
And thank you for the well wishes too for my voice to return.
And then Diane Boss, thank you very much for re-upping as a member. And Guy, I saw you in there talking about you were gonna donate something. Do not worry about it. It helps us if you do, but it doesn't kill us if you don't. So
I
it's
also
fine.
saw the plans for another road trip.
Yeah.
Or to get a road trip going to the west side of the state.
Yep. So, all right, everybody, we're going to get going. So thank you very much, everybody. And with that, Michelle.
Why do you have to make me talk? He wanted you guys to hear me squeak. That's what it is.
All right, everybody. Have a great night. And remember,
keep your eyes to the sky.
Oh, you're too quiet. Keep your eyes to that sky. We'll see you, everybody. See you Sunday with Ray Szymanski, 8 p.m. Eastern.